Hello and welcome to another video in this series detailing the main features of PhotoPhile, a photo management tool for the Apple iPad. This video is going to cover briefly the Eye-Fi integration. If you haven't come across them yet, Eye-Fi cards are a wonderful invention which allow any camera which takes an SD card to become a Wi-Fi transmitter. In effect, what this allows you to do is take pictures and then in real time stream them over the airwaves to anything that can receive a Wi-Fi signal. So Mac, PC, but also things like iPhones and iPads. Now, Eye-Fi do of course provide software to integrate with it. PhotoPhile takes the basic functionality of receiving the photos and storing them and integrates it into all the rest. So you have your filtering and uploading and all of that kind of thing available. So first thing I'm going to do is come into settings and then scroll down to the Eye-Fi configuration. Now you can see there I don't have any cards listed on the right, and the first thing I'm going to do is simply hit the Get Cards button. Now what that's going to do is go off to Eye-Fi's servers, fetch the details for my account, which I already had entered there as you saw, and retrieve the Pro card that I have registered. Now what that's done is straight away come back and it's now installing a special Wi-Fi network. This is exactly the same procedure as the standard Eye-Fi app would do. So what I'm going to do now is tap install, and it's saying the profile's not signed. That's okay. This is a security measure so that you can make sure that if you're installing network capability that you know where it came from. In this case it's just not possible to sign things, so we have to accept that and tap install again, and then done. Okay, so we're back in PhotoPhile and you should hopefully be able to see the Eye-Fi icon on the toolbar pulsing, and that's showing that it's connected and it's transferring a file. Bear in mind that this is a RAW file we're transferring, not a JPEG, and it's coming from a 23 megapixel camera. This should finish receiving soon, and once it does, what's going to happen is it will come straight into the slideshow. This is optional, you don't have to do this, and it's already decoded it there, it's now decoding it further in the background. I'm not going to be taking a whole series of different photos because the camera is actually in another room and I'm triggering it with a remote, so we're going to have lots of photos of oranges by the time that this is done. So now that we have a photo, I'd like to cover one of the advantages of using PhotoPhile over other Eye-Fi apps, which is geotagging. That's where you have positional latitude, longitude information created against photos as they arrive. With the Eye-Fi app it does it by triangulation between Wi-Fi antennas that are nearby, but if you're somewhere that doesn't have good Wi-Fi coverage, like anywhere outside a city, then that's perhaps not a stunning idea. It's also not very accurate compared to other methods. The iPad has a perfectly functional GPS in most units, so why not use that? So I've just come back into the grid and we're going to make sure that there's nothing selected in here, pick the last one that arrived, and because I've had the iPad next to the window you can see now that this has latitude, longitude and altitude assigned. That's done in real time as it arrives. Obviously that depends on you being able to get a good signal. Now one thing you'll probably have noticed if you use any Eye-Fi app, including the default, is that if you haven't taken a photo for a few seconds, then you can very quickly end up losing that Wi-Fi connection. And one of the gotchas on the iPad, and I believe the iPhone as well, is that you then suddenly reconnect silently to your normal Wi-Fi. And what Eye-Fi recommend doing in this case is just switch off all of your other Wi-Fi devices, which isn't convenient, or remove the profile, which isn't convenient because it means that you've got to then go and re-enter potentially complex passwords. So the camera has now been idle for a little while. I don't want to leave it permanently on because that drains the batteries. That's one of the other solutions. So if we come into settings here, what I'd like to do is show you how PhotoPhile can get round this problem. You can see there we're connected to a normal Wi-Fi network and that the Eye-Fi card itself is not currently showing. So if I go into the details on that network, you can see at the top it simply says forget this network, and that's your only choice. What this will do is just erase all memory of the network, which means that the next time you connect to it, you're going to have to re-enter your Wi-Fi password, and if you have a faintly sensible password, you're not going to remember it. Ideally what we want is a way of remembering the network but telling it temporarily not to bother reconnecting to it, and that's what we can do with PhotoPhile. What I'm going to do now is tap the Save Wi-Fi button, and this pops up a window which lets you put in basically the same information that you would if you were connecting to a Wi-Fi network, but this works slightly differently. So you can see there that we have the profile name, which is anything you like, the network name, and I'm just going to enter the Wi-Fi password. And what this is doing is storing just enough information to allow your iPad to reconnect to the network, just as it would if you were using the settings. Okay, that's done, so we tap Create, and just as it did for the Eye-Fi card itself, we're now installing a profile in your iPad. This one is for your own Wi-Fi network, not for the Eye-Fi card. As before, it's an unsigned profile, there's no way around that, so we accept that, tap Done, and we come back into PhotoPhile. So the next thing I'm going to do is come straight back out of here and return to the Settings app. So you should be able to see that it looks as though nothing whatsoever has changed. However, if I tap on the eye symbol, you can see at the top, instead of having forget this network, we now have an AutoJoin switch, and this is exactly what we need. By switching this to off, you retain the definitions for the network, but you can tell it temporarily, don't connect to this one. What this means is that when your Eye-Fi card disappears because it's gone to sleep, the iPad will not connect to another network, and when the Eye-Fi card reappears, having taken a new photo, it will still be looking for networks to join, and the Eye-Fi card should then be the preferred network. The steps we've just done installing the profile are a one-off. You don't need to do this every time you run the app. So let's give it a try. We're now in a position that you would be in at the start of a day's photography. We're connected to normal Wi-Fi, and the Eye-Fi card is awake and trying to transmit. So I've selected that one by hand, and I'm just going to check that the other two networks we have are both set so that they are not AutoJoin. And let's come back into PhotoPhile, and we should now be able to receive another photo. So before that photo arrives completely, I'm going to pause the video, put the iPad to sleep, and that will allow the Eye-Fi card to go to sleep. Okay, a few minutes have passed. I'm going to come back into settings. The Eye-Fi card is already there because I woke it up by taking a picture a minute or two ago, and you can see there that it's gone straight in and it's chosen that one as its preferred network. The standard Wi-Fi network was still there, but remember we have that AutoJoin switch set to off. So come back into PhotoPhile, and before long that should start receiving the photo that's been waiting there. And there it is, 3 oranges, what a shock. Okay, a couple more things I'd like to cover now. First of all, the card that we've been using so far is a Pro X2 card, which can handle both RAW and JPEG files. And to get those set up, you need to add the account and password details, as you've already seen. There is another kind of Eye-Fi card available, which is called a Mobi card, and that one only handles JPEG files. Those are set up in a different way, and that's what I'm going to go through now. Instead of tapping on the Get Cards button, I'm going to tap on the Add button beneath the cards list. So in here we have a couple of options. There is the Mobi option and there is the Pro Manual option. This is really only here just in case. It's basically the same setup that you would have in other third-party Eye-Fi apps where you need to go fossicking around in the depths of your computer to find special codes. We don't like doing that. So what I'm going to do here is just add a Mobi card. The card name can be anything you like, it just appears in the list on the right. The activation code appears on the box of the Mobi card itself, and it's a sequence of letters and numbers which uniquely identify that card. So as I type that code in, you can see that it's appearing in red text, and this is telling you that the code is either incorrect or incomplete. Okay, that's it done. It's changed to black, and the Add button in the bottom right hand side is lit up. And when I tap that, we're going to go straight through the procedure that you've already seen twice now for installing a new network profile. If you look in the Contains section though, this time it says contains 2 Wi-Fi networks. Before it just said contained 1. And this is because we now have 2 Eye-Fi cards registered. So I'm just going to install that exactly the same way that we did before. So although we have 2 cards registered and it will talk to both cards, it's not possible to talk to both at the same time, unfortunately, because the iPad can only connect to one Wi-Fi network at a time. So the last thing I'd like to do is go through some of the other settings that are available for Eye-Fi. Obviously the first switch there allows you to turn the server off, which means it simply won't respond to any requests from Eye-Fi cards. The next setting allows you to store the photos in the camera roll. By default, it will store the photos in PhotoPhile's own storage, which means that they're not available to other apps on your iPad. So scrolling down a bit, the next option is to choose which types of files we are willing to accept, where there is RAW and RAW or JPEG. If you have a Pro card, you can send either. If you have a Mobi card, you can only send JPEG, of course. The following option is for the folder structure. You can choose the naming of the folder that is created automatically when you receive Eye-Fi photos, and this will allow you to sort them by the card name, which you defined earlier, and date in many different formats. Finally, we have the geotagging options, which you've already seen in operation. The only other comment here is that the geotag accuracy affects how much power your iPad is using. The iPad is very smart about how it finds out where it is. If you're happy to accept a lower accuracy, perhaps down to the nearest 500 meters, then it will use Wi-Fi antenna only. A bit more accurate, and it will start to use the cell phone antenna, and if you want it very accurate, as this is set to just now, then it will use the GPS. And the really genuinely final thing is the uploaders. There is a separate video on these, so there's no detail here, except to say that you could very easily set things up so that when you push the button on your camera, the photo is sent from there to PhotoPhile, which will then create a screen-sized preview, watermark it, send it to Flickr, and also send a backup of the RAW file to a private Dropbox account, all without you pushing any button apart from the one on the camera. So in summary, what does PhotoPhile offer that other Eye-Fi apps don't? Well, we have full screen preview, we have a quick reject button for photos that are received, we have genuine real-time geotagging at whatever accuracy you like, we have the wonderful uploaders feature which allows you to send to multiple targets in multiple formats, we have easy setup of Pro cards without having to squirrel around to find configuration files, we have full support for Mobi cards simply by typing in the code. Unlike some other clients, we don't cheat by reading the JPEG preview from received files. We decode the entire file, no matter how many megapixels it has, no matter whether it's JPEG or RAW. What you see is genuinely what the camera has produced. And even more finally than the last thing that I said was final, thank you for watching.